Hi everyone. Just going to get rid of that little OK button. Hello everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening as always. And this is going to be a slightly different sort of webinar. It's going to be a bit of a communal chat. So we've got the lovely Clare Iles with us today, and we're going to have a chat with her. Most of you will know her, I think, from the network sessions. And then I'm going to get some of our lovely network leaders to join in as well and just sort of give us some ideas about how they're managing loose parts. So bear with me while I just share my screen. Oh, you will need your phones if you've got them to hand. Claire, you don't need your phone.
Okay.
But I've got a Slido working this week. So I know everyone likes a Slido. Right, let me just get that bit there. It just takes a moment. Sorry, it's a little bit.
Cool. What's there?
That's okay. We don't mind your daughter is singing in the background. That's fine. Because actually you're muted. Everyone's muted. So she can sing away. It's fine. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that loose parts bit there. Let me just, could someone unmute themselves and just say a yes or a no for me, please?
I can see it.
Lovely. Thank you. Okay. So as I said, welcome to our Loose Parts webinar. And as always, this is a stronger practice hub. I've put chat rather than webinar tonight because you'll be pleased to know it's not just me talking at you. It's more of a group thing. So with myself, Kim Barnetson, I'm the childminding partner for the Stronger Practice Hub. And we have Lisa and Damon with us from the Stronger Practice Hub as well. I can't see the chat while I've got the PowerPoint up. So Damon's going to be my IT person and let me know if anything's in the chat. And today we have our wonderful special guest, Clare Iles, who most of you, I think, will know from some of the network sessions. So let's get started. Here's tonight's agenda. We're going to discuss what are loose parts, how do they differ from manufactured resources, and what difference can they make to children's development. I should say, when we're talking about loose parts, there's a blurred line between loose parts and open-ended resources. And for the purposes of this session, let's imagine they're the same thing. So when we're talking about loose parts, we're also talking about open-ended resources that don't have they don't have to be used in a certain way. You'll see what I mean. I'm going to explain it in a moment. Then we're going to have a quick chat with Clare. Then we're going to move on to some frequently asked questions that we get about loose parts. Any of us that use loose parts, when you talk to other people about them, these are some of the questions you'll get, which are they safe? Where do you get your loose parts? How do you store them? And then I'm going to sort of speak to get some of our network leaders to just tell us some of their favourite loose parts. And also the lovely Marion Walker is going to talk us through an observation. She took a few photos of her children with some loose parts, and I thought it was just a really perfect example of how that they can be used in any way. Then, as always, we've got time for some questions and some chat. Oh, in between, we've got the Slido, because I know everyone always likes that. And then I've put some references at the end for you in case you want to do further reading or anything like that at all. So here we go. I got this lovely quote from the Play Scotland website, there is a link at the end for you. It's really, really helpful if you're interested in using loose parts and you haven't used them before, or you don't quite know where to start. So when children interact with loose parts, they enter a world of what if that promotes the type of thinking that leads to problem solving and theoretical reasoning. Loose parts enhance children's ability to think imaginatively and see solutions, and they bring a sense of adventure and excitement to children's play. Anyone who was with us last week for the characteristics of effective learning will know these are all the things we're trying to promote in the early years for our children. Throughout this presentation, I've just put scattered photos really of children using loose parts or things that children have done with loose parts. So what do we mean about closed or open-ended resources. So I've got an example here for you. A closed resource is something that's designed and built with just one purpose. So a really good example is a toy garage, or maybe a doll's house, or a toy cooker, or something like that, something along those lines that's manufactured, built for a certain purpose, and is used in one way. Whereas an open-ended resource is limited only by the child's imagination. So in this picture, this was taken at my setting. The children are using planks and they're rolling cars down there, but they're also rolling other things as well. They've decided where to put the planks, so some of them are higher up. And they went on to use the planks later on to balance on themselves and sort of just roll all sorts of things down there. Teddy bears and all sorts of stuff went down those planks. But they can use them however they want, put them wherever they want. It's open-ended. It's completely up to them how they use them. Whereas the garage is only ever going to be a garage. So that's what we mean. And when we think about last week, when we were talking about the characteristics of effective learning, and throughout all of our sessions, we know that children learn best when their play is led, they lead their own play. Oh yes, that's fantastic. That's exactly right. What we're saying about open-ended, and you'll see in a moment that they can be absolutely anything. I just happen to have some leftover flooring planks, and I got some of that tape that you can put that looks like a road. So one side has got the tape on, the other side is blank, and then they just use them wherever they want. They're always being used, those things. They're one of our favorite resources. But you're absolutely right. You can use those resources to do anything. So we'll get on to that bit in a little while, if that's okay. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do. So hold on to that thought, Sarah, because we're going to, when we get to the Slido, I'm going to ask you to pop in your favourite open-ended resources or loose parts. So hopefully that makes sense what we mean between a closed and an open-ended resource. And generally speaking, loose parts are open-ended because they can be anything. It's up to the child to use them in the way that they want to. This was from a poster from the Play Scotland, and it's just again, there's the link at the end. It just gives you an idea of what some loose parts could be. As you can see, they can be absolutely anything. They can be very small things like the plastic bottle tops. They can be really big things like cable reels, or tires or planks. They can be things like ribbons or pom-poms or buttons or pieces of fabric. Absolutely anything that is open-ended and isn't designed for one specific purpose or can be used in different ways. So cardboard box or Velcro rollers obviously were made for a purpose, but if you gave them to children and didn't tell them what they were, they would use them for their own purposes, wouldn't they? They'd decide how to use them. So how do loose parts and open-ended resources support children's development? So this is just a few little snapshots. They're supporting self-set challenge. Look at this little one balancing on the cable reels. That's totally his idea and his own challenge, and he's achieving something that he'd set himself, his own goal. It supports creative and critical thinking. So you can see the little girl popping some things into a bottle there. I think she was cutting some chalk up or something and popping it into the bottle. That creative and critical thinking, again, is exactly what we were talking about last week in the characteristics of effective learning, and how children need to have these challenges that they set themselves. They need to experience, not failure isn't quite the right word, but sometimes things go wrong, don't they? And they have to think of different ways of achieving their goal. And that's how we build resilience in children. Things like, here we've got the children with the pipe and the water, and they're getting it from the mud kitchen. They're working that all out themselves. There aren't any adults telling them how to use those resources. And even the little one on the end with the mud and the petals. Petals are a really good loose part, actually. Flowers, especially if you get an old, you've had some flowers and you just leave when they've sort of gone past their best, pop them out somewhere and let the children do what they want with them. that's a really, really lovely resource for all sorts of things, potion making and making fairy beds or whatever they want to do with them. The point is, it's up to them to decide. So, Claire, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so we can have a quick chat, and then I'll come back on here in a moment. Right, are you ready, Claire?
Yep, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Most of you, I think, will know Claire because she runs our wonderful sessions on networking sessions. But if anyone hasn't been to any of Claire's sessions, please try and get to them because they're absolutely amazing. Claire is an artist and uses loose parts in her art. And when she comes along to the session, she brings a whole carload of loose parts, basically, don't you?
Yeah,
And the children engage with them. So I've got a couple of questions for you, Claire.
okay.
I've known Claire a long time, and I've been coming to Claire's sessions for a very long time, haven't I? But I was
Yeah.
wondering, did you set out to use loose parts in your sessions with children? Because I know you teach young people as well, don't you?
Yes.
Um, but or did it sort of evolve naturally? Did you see that they were using
Mm.
bits, and how did it work? How did you come to that?
I think I had to think about this. I think really it's come from quite a few things. So it's come from obviously how I played as a child, but then also it's come from also when I was learning to be an artist and at art school and things and how I collected things. And it was always multiples of things and that curiosity of taking things apart.
Yeah,
Because a lot of things I bring, some things are like already a loose part, like a cone or a natural thing, or it could be something I've taken apart. It could be a chair leg that I've cut apart. Like all the blocks of wood come from all different things. So I think it's a number, but more importantly, it was like when I started working with children, because I've always worked like at college, like from 18 above. I only started really working with children when I had a child myself. So, and actually, a lot of it came about when my son was a toddler, under 5, and I was learning to kind of play with him, or I found a way of playing with him through these materials that we found or I had, and and also I think lockdown. I know I
mm,
actually cringe when I hear about lockdown, but actually it was from that as well. It was a way of trying to understand the school system and how to navigate that. But we didn't kind of we did that through um, working with loose parts. But and I remember, the early years teachers used to talk to me about loose parts. I was like, oh, is that what you call it? Because I never called it loose parts,
yeah,
you know. So it's working with multiples of things, and it can be, like you said, all those things that you mentioned. But for me, it's like natural and man-made, hard and soft materials, materials that can build up and build down, take apart. Yeah, and
brilliant.
also materials like so if you've got um like wood, it's the things that can go with that, like materials that can help connect things. So it could be string, tape, clay, anything that will help you join those things or kind of open up the door to other things, with those.
Yeah, that's a really good way to
uh,
put it, actually, isn't it? Because even though you haven't got training in early years, you sort of
no, not so.
instinctively
Yeah.
understand that children need to have opportunities to do those things, to deconstruct
Yes.
something or to join something together, to construct and then deconstruct,
Mm.
and find their own way, come to that in their own way, rather than an adult telling them.
Oh, very much so. Like, and I feel, and I've seen it, it's reconfirmed that for me because it's, people, I remember, like, for just to say quickly, like, I did learn also when Freddie went to nursery, I'd speak to them. I went there, did something with them, I learned as I went as well with people around me. But, oh, what was I going to say? I've diverted there. Um, what did you say again? Sorry.
I said about that, the children that you've sort of come to that sort of naturally without having to
Yeah.
be trained in it,
And
but the children sort of you
yeah,
recognise it
and
the
I
right way.
remember at school, there was the reception children said, oh, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, it's, Freddie's learning from it. Because
Yeah.
I think sometimes I think one of the teachers thought maybe you should step in a bit more. But actually, I found obviously I'd always sit with Freddie. I was always present. I was there. But I find that if you playing or you're working with yourself as well as an adult, playing, however that is. And that's hard for some people, I know. And sometimes if you're not in the mood, and all those sorts of things. But then the child and will start to play in their way rather than dictate what that play is, like what you're talking about. And we proved it because I think it was, where was it? Welwyn Garden City, somewhere like that. And it was really interesting because this childminder was like, oh, and, this little girl, she's very shy. She won't play with you. I said, don't worry, I'm not gonna scare
Mm.
her or do anything. So I just started playing on the floor, like I would with my son.
Mm.
And she literally, this child transformed. And even the lady, she was lovely. And she said, oh my goodness. She's like, because she was so shy and she spoke another language. She's still learning English, all these things.
Mm.
It kind of transcends language.
Yeah.
Because it's creating a new language. That's another thing I'd say to like,
Mm.
it's talking in a different way. You're talking through materials. And I know Lisa talked about this in one of the sessions with this really young little girl at Whittam.
Mm.
She would say the odd words and how that actual words will help play. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And on another side of things,
Yeah.
but,
Oh, no, that's
but
brilliant. I think you're completely right. So, for anyone who's familiar with some of the theorists, so what Claire's sort of what she does is naturally what we would say is the Reggio Emilia. I don't know if you've heard of those, Claire, but I'll tell
yeah,
you. I'll tell you if anyone
yeah,
don't.
no, because you told me about it a
They
while ago.
start
Yeah,
usually. They have
and Lisa.
Italian pedagogy, but they have an artist in every setting, early years setting, who works alongside the children. So it's not the artist saying, I'm the expert, I'm going to
Mm,
show you how to use these resources.
mm,
They're just working at the same level.
mm.
And that's something we've spoken about quite a lot on these webinars. So it's interesting that you've come to that. And I can't remember which artist is it, which theorist is it, Claire, Lisa, with the 100 languages. That's exactly what Claire's talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, oh gosh.
I've got to look it up. Sorry, everyone. Bear with me 2 seconds.
Not
Okay.
Malagasy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was the founder of um Reggio. So
Yes, it's
it
the
all
same thing.
comes in, doesn't it?
That children communicate in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah.
And gosh, Claire, you're so on the ball with that. That's incredible, really. You completely summed up that theory in a few words, didn't you? Um, so, I mean, anyone that's been to your sessions, I think, will have seen just how engaged the children are. But I was wondering when, like you've said, given those examples about those little ones,
Mm.
but do you what do you see in the children when they're involved with when they come into your session and they start doing things? What is it you see in them that they're doing? What do
Um,
you observe, do you
it's
think?
funny because normally I'm busy with them.
Hmm.
And sometimes I will sit back and look at them, you know, and seeing
Yeah.
what they're doing. They're curious, they're using their imagination, they're creative, and that's what you want every
Mm.
child. And I believe this should be all across ages. And I've actually worked with across ages, even adults sort of doing
Yeah.
that sort of thing. There's more of a resistance, with as they get older. But they're kind of, and they are engaged. They are fully engaged. They're quite peaceful, I think, because they're so engaged. Because it's not often I've noticed in the session, some sessions, obviously, children are tired or they're not well or whatever, or something happens, but most of them are quite they are just
I
focusing.
completely agree.
Yes,
Some of your sessions are almost
unbelievable, isn't it?
very, very quiet, aren't they?
Mhm.
Because the children are so
Oh,
engaged.
they're quiet. Sometimes they can be quite more loud. I suppose it depends on the numbers as well. Like we've had some crazy sessions, haven't we? Really mad. And then we've had some really peaceful. I remember at Coggeshall we had some very gentle sessions,
Yeah.
and but also it depends on the energy, doesn't it? In that room, in that space,
Yeah.
with those children.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite amazing for me to see how they play and what they do.
Mm.
It gives me a great joy to see that, because I think so much in life, as they get older, it's taken out of them,
Mm.
But even my son now, when he's 10,
Yeah.
and obviously he's gone through that school system, he's become regimented, and what have you, but he will still go back to it. He was still, I'm not saying all the time, but he'll
Mm.
still be curious, and he will go and find materials. That's what I love, He'll find his own materials. I don't, or we'll go past somewhere and he'll want to collect those materials. So it still happens. He can still tap into that, even though he's 10, and he'll probably look at it a bit differently and build, But
Yeah.
I know Lisa was talking about that in one of the sessions, because he came to the session, and she was saying that you could see the experience he'd had, from being younger. So it's quite interesting. But then on another note, those children who haven't had access to that experience, which is the ones we also massively care about,
Yeah.
that they, it might take a bit of time, for them to, we've talked about that, haven't we? And I know Lisa has, they take a bit more time, and they just need a bit more, I guess, presence of not someone telling them what to do, but kind of bit more spending more time sort of playing alongside them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas the others are probably well off, and they don't need, some of them won't need it because they know what
Mm.
they're doing. If you look at your children, the ones you look after,
Yeah.
they're quite used to it, aren't they? So they're
Yes.
very
Yeah.
independent. There's more independence, depending, on their mood.
Yes, of
And
course. Yeah. They might need a
yeah,
little bit of support with, I don't
yeah,
know, starting off some tape or something like that, but they've
yes,
got
practical.
their
Yeah,
own ideas in mind, and really I'm just there to help with those things
exactly. Support that.
where they're
Yeah,
stuck, where they
I
ask for
think,
help.
Kim, that like if we go back to, I mean, I haven't been to a childminder session for a little while now, sadly.
yeah,
But go back to those sessions where Claire was there and just observing Claire down, like she says, down the children at the children's level. She's not actually making the children do anything, but by just playing with something yourself, it goes right back to that in the moment that we were talking about a few
definitely.
weeks ago, wasn't it? Where we're saying, you could just be there playing, and it sparks that interest from the child, and almost that slow pedagogy that we were talking about a few weeks ago, and almost a bit like Kate's idea of that yes culture. When you throw all those things on the floor, there isn't any reason for a no, is there? You can do
No.
whatever you want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I think for practitioners to see how Claire was engaging with the children was really quite eye-opening for them, because
Mm.
like you say, those children that they said, oh, they're not going to do this and they're not going to do that, just by being present in that moment, those children were captivated and quite quickly came round to being able to talk to you and communicate and investigate, because you were just present. You didn't
and,
it didn't require anything
no, and
from
I
them.
think
Not put
as
any
soon as,
pressure on them.
and I think also, um, it's also there, and it allows them to take ownership of that space. Because soon as I stand, this might sound, but as soon as I stand up, I feel like a giant
Yeah,
amongst them all. But if I'm down low on the
yeah,
floor, it's also the floor, that mat,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
lovely mat that's survived so many sessions. But it's like being on that ground, and we're all equal. All those materials are equal. We're all equal as
Yeah.
people, either you're young, old, whatever age we are. It's something to do with that as well.
That's a really lovely way to describe it, Claire. Honestly, Claire, I think you could be an early years expert because you just put it without even having to have studied it. What I really like as well is you're so calm. So that because you're calm, it calms the whole session down. You're
That's
not
nice.
you're not having to sort of raise your voice to talk above anyone or
No,
anything like. You're just sitting calmly, doing your own thing, and the children are sort of drawn to that, aren't they? And want to sort of do their own thing as well, aren't they? Which is
yeah,
just think it's lovely. So one thing I was going to ask was, obviously, when you do your sessions, and the wonderful thing about that is you're doing it in a big hall on that big mat with all
Yeah.
of a carload of stuff. How could you what would you say to people who hadn't done any of those sessions before or wanted to take a little bit of that and try and replicate it at home? Have you got any hints or tips or
Yeah, I think, you know, that mat is so interesting anyway, how it frames that space, but obviously the scale of it, you'd have to have a very big house or a very big garden, which a lot of us don't. So it would be, I think it's just working outside offers so many benefits, and it just allows things to happen, doesn't it? That space away from the indoors, because we've all got like curtains and carpets and all those, and it makes it less precious. But also, if it was indoors, just kind of setting an area, because it's funny how those children do work within whatever size, I think, that
that mat
space. Doesn't
delineate
matter. Yeah,
area?
or I guess it could be on a table, but I really think the floor. I feel quite passionate about that. As an artist, I've always worked on the floor at times, not always, because as I get older, that's a bit harder. But it's like, no, it's true though, and it's like, but so I think, but it could be on a low table, couldn't it? It doesn't have to be, but I think definitely outside, and also about. Can I say a bit about collecting materials as well? I think for me, I think because somebody, where do you get everything? Da da da. We all have access to this stuff, whether it's in our house, whether, if you go to the supermarket. I love it when I go with Freddie. He will pick out some great things, or wherever you go, you'll come across stuff. I know and also you could get other people involved, families and friends, because I know, like you, Kim, you've helped me out with stuff. And I know I've got a studio at Cookie Farm, and there's lots of people there, and lots of people leave me things. Some things I won't use because I've got to make sure certain things. But it's also the collecting of it. Collect it as you go, just wherever you go. It sounds crazy, but you'll find things. We found things along where people put outside their houses, because that happens a lot now, doesn't it? There's a massive one down Greenstead Road today, a stall or whatever. You'll find things. You don't need to go and buy it really.
Yeah,
But
no, I agree. And in
I know
fact,
that's a bit obvious, but I know a lot of them probably. I know a lot of childminders are doing that anyway. But
yes, yeah, I
you
think we
know,
are quite
they're
frugal.
doing some great stuff.
I do think one of the problems with buying things is they tend to be expensive, and
Yeah,
then you're a little
don't.
bit more precious about how they're used. Whereas
Well, they're
if
new. It's
picked it
it's
up,
yeah, they're new. You
like
want things
so-
that have. Sorry,
yeah, that's all right.
you want things that have a story, like you were saying, that have been used for other things. You're reusing. It's
Yeah,
that idea of reusing, recycling. It's had another life. It's
mm,
been on a journey, and you're going to now take that identity away, and make it into something else
yeah.
through your own play, through your own decisions, through your own rules. And where else do we ever get a chance to do that?
Yeah.
So,
No, I think that's,
or the children.
yeah,
It's not just the
it's
children, is
fantastic.
it?
And it makes it achievable for everyone. That means you don't have to go out
Yeah.
and spend a lot of money. You can just look out for boxes, as I
Yes.
was saying
And
earlier,
actually,
cardboard tubes and all that type of thing. So in a little while, we have a thing called a Slido, which is like interactive page where
oh,
everyone's going to hopefully pop on some of their ideas about their loose parts they use in their
yeah.
setting. Um, but I think, yeah, that's I agree. I
And
think we should all be trying to, if possible, go for these recycle things, as you said, things that have had another life. Marion and I were talking about buttons, which is and keys earlier, and that
it's
the
nice.
button. I've got some button tins that have got old buttons in, and some of those have been on like a policeman's uniform, or they were
Yeah,
on someone's coat 50 years ago.
yeah,
And I
it's
just like
lovely.
there's something so tactile about something that's, like you say, it's had another life.
Yeah.
And now you're moving it on to something else, or using it in a different way, or
And it could be your grandmother gives it to you, or somebody, it comes from, and you could even have all that, that kind of links to your family and all that. But also with the natural materials, it's like, I know you're into this, you know, it's so interesting, isn't it, what happens seasonally? Like you can get hold of pumpkins or conkers or all those things. I know many people do, and many people have brought some, you know, when they start bringing materials to session, they bring things or shells, or I know they're always around, but I mean, you could, you know, collect
natural things, yeah. And also that
and
helps to
everything.
represent the seasons a little bit, doesn't it? And
Yes.
let children sort of understand that cycle of the year as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Seasonal things, like, I don't know, little
You know,
offcuts from
you
trees
need
or
to,
seeds or
you need like a basic kit of tape, string, clay, that sort of thing. I know, paint, whatever, like the sort of stuff you know, Reach Out provided.
yeah,
And then that can last for a long time, you know. The
yeah,
only thing is, you know, chalk is great, isn't it? Things like that.
yeah.
Pens, I don't know, I've got a love and hate relationship with felt tip pens because they sort of, you know, they just lose their lids and dry out so quickly.
Yeah.
But then, as we said, you know, I know Lisa and you have said about how they lose parts in themselves. And then so many people are trying to have always got things like that to pass on, haven't they? Paints, and
Yeah,
I've found myself, you know, pens and things like that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you just need a basic kit of things like that and clay,
And then you
and
can add
then
to it,
and all the loose
put it in
parts will
a
work
box so
wonderfully
you can
with
take
it.
it outside and
Yeah,
yeah,
and then it's kind of things that have got multiple uses, you know, and
open.
can do open-ended and can be used in so many different ways, flexibility and adapt to many different things.
Fantastic. Thank
But
you, Claire. That's absolutely
um,
amazing. We're going to just move on so I can quickly
yeah,
talk about some of the frequently asked questions, but hang around because I'm sure you'll have some more
yeah,
stuff to say. Let me just share my screen again. And we'll get back to where we were on that bit. Bear with me because this always takes a moment. So, I'm hoping that you can all see that. Can you see the pictures of one of Claire's sessions with the ropes on?
yes,
Lovely. The one on the right is at my house, and it's some hats with treasure in them being used as a loose part. That was some sort of reward system that the children had set up by themselves. I didn't get a reward, so I don't know what you had to do. I will read the chat in a moment. Thank you, everyone that's putting things in the chat. We'll get onto that in just a moment. So, it should be coming on to the next bit. Come on. Oh, here we go. Okay. So frequently asked questions and the network leaders. If there are any other network leaders on here, like Jackie or Emma or anyone like that, feel free to jump in. I know Marion's on here, so I'm gonna call on Marion. So we were talking about loose parts and our favourite loose parts, the things that get used the most. I think in my setting, it's a bag of fabric fabric scarves and things like that I've had for years and years and years, and they have some big pegs, and the children use them for everything. They make dens, they make nests, they wrap their babies up in them, they use them to dress in. You know, it's open ended. And Marion sent this picture of some containers, and I would say when we get to the bit about how to get started, if you're not sure, get started with some containers. They're very, very easy to use. So let's go on to the next slide and you'll see. So Marion sent me these pictures earlier in the week of some children in her setting using some loose parts, and she had such an amazing observation that she'd done that I thought I was just going to ask her to explain what's going on in these pictures, Marion, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. So these two little ones didn't want to go outside and play in the afternoon, and they asked to stay in. So I stayed in. So there was only the two of them in the room. And they got the loose parts. We have a trolley of loose parts as well as bits around the room. But they had, funny enough, Kim had sent a thing about loose parts on the sofa being like the title of her webinar kind of thing. And I thought, oh, what if I roll the trolley over near the sofa and just see what happens? And they were right there. And all I did was roll the trolley over, and they got all of these things out. And then they kind of started making a story. So the tower that you see the little girl with the yellow bit on top. That was the magic tower. And the orange things on top of that are tiny little stars that they put on top. And they had that as the magic tower, and the stars the light of the stars would bounce off an acorn, which, if you can see, is in a ring of trees on the floor, and give it power. And they're having this conversation and talking about what all of this does. And then, if you can see in the back of the second photo, there's a triangle on the floor, and that triangle ended up being a trap because a witch stole the acorn, so they couldn't have magic anymore, so they had to catch the witch and trap her in this triangle. And so she's now trapped in the triangle. And then the other little girl started making this bridge with buttons, and it was a magic bridge, and every time you stepped on a stepping stone, you could grow and heal if you were ill or if you'd hurt yourself. But then the witch was trying to escape, and they had bobbins, those orange kind of bobbins, and if you rolled the bobbin into the triangle and the triangle broke open, the witch could escape. So I'm watching all of this happen, and they're just telling this story with each other, and then one of them did give me a bobbin, and I had to see if the witch would escape, and I had to roll the bobbin at the triangle, and because the triangle broke, the witch could escape, and she was stealing the magic, and they had to capture her again and put her back in the triangle kind of trap, they were calling it. And this happened several times, but I didn't actually interfere in the story except to do what they asked me to do. But what is also fascinating about it is that the little girl with the yellow t-shirt and the lightning trousers, when she started with us, was a selective mute. And she was leading this story as they were playing. And loose parts for her, from the time that we've kind of started it with her, has been the thing that is unlocked her speaking to adults. She would speak to children absolutely fine. She would speak to her parents absolutely fine, but she wouldn't speak to any other adults. She wouldn't speak to her grandparents. So we've been using loose parts a lot with her, and it's the first thing that she chooses every day. Is she comes in and gets out loose parts. Sometimes she's making a pattern. On this occasion, the two of them were telling a story, and she now speaks to us perfectly. And we actually made her a kit of loose parts that she has at home, and she takes to her grandparents, and she is speaking to them as they engage with the loose parts. And we've kind of come to the conclusion for her, it's about control. That speech was the one bit of control she had, and loose parts allows her to play with things in her own way, however she wants to. And so she's let go a little bit because she has control in other areas of her play and of her life. But the story that the two of them made was just brilliant. The language they were using and how they were bouncing off of each other, and the story had a proper problem in it that they had to solve with the witch stealing the magic, and all of it was just through these bits and bobs that were sitting on a trolley, which I just think is fabulous. And my kind of next step for me to extend it next week is I want to actually bring the loose parts trolley over to story time. And so when I tell a story, I want to have the loose parts out. If I'm reading a book or we're telling stories, and let the kids use the loose parts or model using loose parts to tell a story, and then see where they take it. Because I think there's actually a whole host of ways I could be using them that I hadn't really thought of until the children did this kind of story time of their own. So I'd quite like to see what happens if I start utilizing them a bit more with storytelling, and actually with book reading. I think you could quite easily use loose parts to help create the story in front of them and let them create part of the story or extend a story, what happened next. So yeah, that was my very exciting day yesterday.
Thank you, Marion. Well, that is just amazing, isn't it? I mean, I just, the learning and development that's going on in those pictures is just incredible, isn't it? Communication, as you say, particularly for the little girl with the fabulous trousers on, but also both of them together bouncing off each other, sequencing the story, and it just all of that out of, as you say, these bits and bobs. I actually did a storytelling workshop a few years ago with Catrice Horsley, who was the children's laureate, storytelling laureate, sorry. And after that, I put together what we call a storytelling bag, which is full of random bits. And it's sort of it's just things that you can use to tell a story, and you can take it with you and sit down and tell a story wherever you are using these random objects. And so this is a similar thing. It's absolutely fantastic. Well done. Thank you for explaining that, Marion. I think it really clearly illustrates how loose parts, children can take them and run with them and use them in their own way, whatever type of loose parts they are. So let's go on to the next screen. So one of the questions, sorry, Marion.
I was just going to say, I also like the engineering. So there was storytelling going on, but if you look at the pictures, you know, inside that tube are bits of bamboo to make it stand up and hold the yellow bit at the top. The bridge that she's making is built up. You know, just the kind of problem solving and engineering at their own level, I think is fascinating as well with loose parts.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I see that quite a lot with the big loose parts in my setting, you know, whether they're stacking big things up and making them really tall, or they're balancing on them, or rolling things along, that type of stuff. A lot of engineering going on. I completely agree. It's amazing. So one of the questions we get asked quite often, I'm sure Marion does as well, is how do you store your loose parts? Well, that's a bit of depends on your setting. And I think someone last week, when we were talking about characteristics of effective learning, said, you know, I want to provide these things, but I don't want my garden to look like a junkyard, which is completely fair enough. It's your garden. But there are ways to do it. You don't have to have lots and lots and lots of everything. You can have just a small amount. It can be smaller, you know. So I don't know, for instance, the blue basket on the bottom right is full of jam jar lids. You know, that's there's probably 15 jam jar lids in there. Or as Marion's got some cardboard tubes there, I've got some just in a corner of my conservatory. You don't need to have hundreds and hundreds of things. I've got the top right is the little chest of drawers. That's mine. Someone gave me that, or I bought it in a charity shop. That's full of little bits and bobs that are loose parts, but you know, it's stored away quite easily in there. The children can access it when they want to. So there are different ways of doing it. And one of the questions we get asked a lot, and I don't know if any of the other network people, childminders, are on here, but are they safe, these loose parts? And don't do that yet. Don't do the Slido yet. I skipped it too quickly. Are loose parts safe? And obviously, it's down to you to risk assess what's safe in your setting with your children. And when we were talking about buttons, for instance, you obviously wouldn't give very small buttons to a very young child, or to a child that you knew was always putting things in their mouth. You just wouldn't, would you? You'd remove those maybe and put them out on a different day when you had different children, or you might wait a couple of months and then try again with them. But there are loose parts, like we saw in that poster from Play Scotland, can be literally anything. So they don't have to be little. They can be big. They don't have to be sort of anything that's going to hurt a child. They don't have to be anything dangerous. They can be cardboard boxes. They can be tubes. They can be pieces of fabric. All of these things are perfectly safe for all age groups to use, aren't they? So definitely risk assess, obviously, as you'd expect to do. For instance, when I get cable reels, my husband very kindly sands them down for me, because quite often they're a little bit chipped around the corner, and I don't want children getting splinters or anything. So you know, it's fairly easy to do, and you don't have to give a child anything you don't feel is suitable or for that child. Have we got any of the other network ladies on here, like any of the Stanway ladies, or or Jackie or Emma or anyone, or Marion, if you wanted to just say anything about how would you suggest that people got started with loose parts? If we've got anyone that would like to do that.
I mean, I started with a very small trolley. One of the photos that you put up is the trolley that's in my house, and it started off as a very small collection. I now have cupboards full of things, and it gets swapped out depending on who's in the setting, you know, what size of things I can put out, what I think they might be interested in. And I do consider, you know, the age of the children in the setting, whether anyone is a mouth, kind of puts things in their mouths, their ears, or up their nose, that kind of thing. And that comes down to size. So yes, some of my loose parts are massive, big giant tubes and giant bits of wood. But you know, even something as simple as felt squares. The kids love to build with bamboo and felt squares on top, which actually is quite hard to balance. So they learn quite a lot about stability, but both of those things are big enough. And I do keep it on a trolley on wheels so that, you know, if then it's not safe if I'm kind of risk assessing in the moment and somebody who doesn't normally put things in their mouth suddenly decides to start, I can easily wheel that trolley to another room if I need to. And in fact, a lot of my loose parts are on trolleys in wheels. The trolleys that we keep outside that have conkers and seashells and sea glass and kind of pine cones, pebbles that the children have collected, sticks that they've collected in the woods that we have to bring home because they're the most precious stick on the face of the earth. You know, they can all get put in a shed at the end of the day if I don't want my garden to look like a junkyard, so to speak. So that is trolleys, like IKEA trolleys, to be fair, cheap and cheerful, have been really useful for that. And I try to keep the outside ones, to be honest, are kind of out all, we put them out all the time and keep them in the same place. The kids know exactly where it is and where they can go to get it. If you move things around too much too often, then kids, you know, they want something and it's not there. But we also tend to put out, I mean, I think as Claire said, clay or string or tape. And that is, we have it in a cupboard, but we just take it out with us, stick it on the tough tray outside or pop it on the table when the kids are playing. And there is a really good tape dispenser that hooks to the table. It's just a Scotch tape, like grey. It hooks to the table. So you were saying you need to help kids with cutting the tape. But actually, because it anchors to the table, they can pull the tape themselves and they can either use scissors to cut it or pull it once they're strong enough. So that's been great because it made it more independent for them.
And that's always good, isn't it? We want to enable that agency as much as possible, don't we? Thank you, Marion. I think that, so I think we all sort of just come to this in our own way, don't we? So most of my loose parts are in baskets and boxes and things along a windowsill, and the children can come and access them however they like. And anything bigger is generally out in the garden. So the cable reels, the planks, the pipes, they're just in their own corners of the garden, sort of stacked up, ready to go. Crates and things. I don't tend to tidy away. This is probably just me admitting that I'm a very messy person. But for instance, our climbing frame always has a den at the top of it. There's always building some type of den up there. And I'm too short to reach it. So unless it's absolutely tipping down with rain and I need to take the cushions and things in overnight, I just leave it because it's still their creation. They're going to come back the next day and carry on with it. And I don't mind it being there, but if you do mind that, then it's very easy at the end of the day just to pick it all up, pop it, like you say, in a shed or in a big bag or something like that, shove it behind the sofa, and then you haven't got to worry about it for the next day. Because I do understand not everyone wants their home or their garden taken over by things, but my own personal experience is that I started moving towards loose parts quite a long time ago. And now my setting is pretty much all loose parts, open-ended resources. So I would say start with a few bits. If you see something interesting, as Claire was saying, if you're out and about and you see something interesting, just, some boxes or some tubes, someone's giving something away or something like that, some pipes. I think last week on the characteristics of effective learning, we saw the picture of the little boy who joined the pipes together from the fountain to get the water into the tub. If you've got sort of pipes like that in the corner, they're very, very cheap. Or if you've got a parent that's a plumber, ask them for some bits like that. My cable reels I get from one of my dads who's an electrician. It's really, really helpful because they don't last forever. And every couple of years, they just need replacing. And he just brings me a whole load of new ones. So, as Claire said, ask families for things or save things up, jam jar lids, things like that. Start small, just have a few different things, but have them so the children can access them, as Marion was saying. So they're available to the children to use. They're not something you have to give to them. They can just come and access them themselves. So while I'm reading the chat, if you've got your phone and you want to scan the Slido QR code, then we can read some of your messages. So can you tell me your top loose parts that you've got in your setting or open-ended resources and why they're your top thing, please? Actually, I might stop sharing and I'll be able to read the chat and still do this at the same time. Maybe. Chat, where's the chat? Let's have a look. I think we might run over our time, Damon. I hope that's okay. So, Sarah said, I don't have these things, so we make them from cereal. But yeah, boxes are the ultimate loose part and open-ended resource. They're just the ultimate. So you can have as many boxes as you can have, and that's fantastic, of all different sizes. And in fact, that's the ideal way to start, isn't it? Because they're free. Everyone's got a box. So, and if you know someone that's getting something delivered, a fridge or something like that, my goodness, ask them for the box, because you can play with it forever, and then when it eventually falls apart, flatten it out and use it to do painting on or something like that. It's just great. Or poking holes in them like that. Debs, I saw your message earlier when we were talking about buttons. Childhood memories unlocked, playing with my mum's button boxes and thinking the metal ones really were precious metals. But they are, those things are precious, aren't they? My grand's button box had a button hook in it that Victorian ladies would have used to do up their buttons on their boots. And that just, for me, that it was just fascinating. I was just fascinated by the whole thing. Okay, Samantha, I've noticed that the small loose parts in the slides are in their own tubs and baskets. Have you ever just had one box with a mixture of loose parts? Not really, but they do get mixed up. But I do tend to sort of try and put them back in their own boxes. You can try it. There's no right or wrong way to offer loose parts and open-ended resources. Just I guess my approach, partly because of the type of setting I am, is that I try and make things look attractive for children. So I wouldn't just put stuff out. I would always try and present it in an attractive way. So whether that's in a basket, a box, or something nice, I try and make it look nice. But you know your setting, try it and see how you get on. I do have that cake stand that's got all of the little wooden bobbins and weird things that I've got from charity shops that no one really knows what they are in it. They're all mixed up together. Guttering, I totally agree. Guttering is an amazing loose part. You can use it for so many different things. Sliced up branches and round logs are our favourite. Yes, I agree, Yolanta. I've got a load of those as well. Yogurt lids and pom-poms. Yep. Guttering. Yeah. Buttons, Play-Doh and sticks. You all know about loose parts already. You knew it all before we even started talking. Oh, hang on. What about toddlers? Mine are around 19 to 20 months. I have no idea how to display it. Jess, you don't really need to display particularly in any sort of fancy way. You could just, depending what you were trying to display, of course. Let's say, for instance, it's pine cones. Just
arrange them. Yeah. Sorry.
That's right.
You could, that's something I've always thought about in the sessions, how much arrange it and place them in the way that you think. They will soon take over the space and make it their own. Yeah. It's quite nice for you just to place things, and it might be quite nice.
I think so. I feel like it's respectful. It's putting it out in a respectful way is how I see it, rather than it's like we used to have that term junk modelling, and I don't like that because that suggests that you're only worth playing with some rubbish, and actually it's a creative material. And I sort of feel like the same for when I'm setting up one of the loose part sessions, like at least try and put it out so that it looks nice. But that's just me. No one has to do that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's think, Jess, if you're thinking about something like pine cones, then I don't know, see if you've got a bowl or a basket or something like that to put.
Hi, yeah, I thought I'd come in. It's easier. I have got
Yeah,
loads of containers, loads of wicker baskets, load of wooden bowls.
yeah,
It's just knowing what, because I've only just started doing this. It's knowing what to put in them. I've got one with shells. I've got buttons. I've got a mug tree with wooden curtain rings.
yeah.
So I'm slowly, I'm just starting the whole process. But so like things like the metal, like would you put the wood in with the metal, or would you separate it? Because I don't know what, like,
But what do you mean by metal?
well, like, like metal utensils, or I've got like a big ball dot. Is it the other clips on the paper ball
Oh
paper
yeah,
paper clip?
I tend to keep all those sort of things separate just because I like the way that looks for the children, that they can come along and they can say, oh, here is the basket of this and here is
Right.
the basket of that. But I'm really not worried about them getting mixed up.
Mm.
I'm not too fussed about that. So I'm happy for them to move them around or tip them out and use the basket for something else. However they want to use them is fine.
Mm.
But that's just
I
my
think
way.
because my children are younger, I feel like all the slides, they're all older children, and it's mine are like 19, 20 months, and it's obviously we've spoken about what's safe for them, but also how it would look. I don't know. Do you know
Yeah,
where I'm coming from?
I think
I,
maybe because you've got very young children, I guess the children in my pictures are roughly around between, there are 2, 3, and 4 in the pictures most
Mm.
at the moment. But you don't have to put tons and tons of it out, just a couple of things and then let them just, you could put something like a couple of cardboard boxes out somewhere and then on the side or however you're setting it up, some loose parts and just see, in a couple of baskets and just see what they do. Do they put
Okay.
the pine cones in the boxes? Do they put the boxes on their heads? It's up completely up to them. But I think I wouldn't sort of try and put out loads and loads of stuff because they are still very young, and sometimes less is more, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Okay.
You know what it's like if you've got a cardboard box
Yeah.
and how children just love a cardboard box, don't they? And that is a loose
Mm.
part, so or an open-ended resource. So
I would say as well, just have it on their level. As long as it's on the
yeah,
floor, on the sofa, if you've got some that are pulling up,
Mm.
then if they're going to find it, they're going to explore it in their own way. And then if you watch, like, for example, one of the little ones that I look after, I've had him since he was very young, and he had a rotational schema. He still loves anything that will roll. So, my loose parts for him became bits of like circular wood that you could roll down a plank. And some when he was very little, they were large, so he didn't put things in his mouth. Now that he's older, we've got smaller things, and he likes to roll balls in another container that he can go round and round and round, and any kind of loose part that will roll, and he'll experiment with anything that can roll. But I think if they're little, just making sure it can be anything. It could be a stack of cups, that they're stacking and knocking over with joy. But if you pay attention to what it is that they really enjoy, then that will probably lead you to think of, oh wait, well, he loves knocking stuff over, so I'm going to give him boxes to stack. Or he loves to roll things, so I'm going to give him some things that he could set up as ramps, or and roll different things down. So just let them lead and tell you
Just
through what.
providing the resources, isn't it? Like Kim keeps saying, just having it there, and then
Yeah.
they decide what to do with it.
Absolutely. But as
yeah.
you watch them, it will also tell you what they enjoy the most, bits that they ignore, then for those children, maybe not right now, and try something different.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's really good advice, Marion. I agree. The whole point of everything we do really on these sessions is to try and get us to think about letting children lead their play. So, as Marion said, if you've got things out there sort of on the level where the children can reach them and see them and explore them, and obviously don't put out stuff that you think is going to be too small for those children. I mean, for instance, I've got some lovely glass nuggets, glass pebbles. They're absolutely fab, but I have got a child at the moment who puts things in his mouth all the time, so I just keep them out of the way for now, and I might get them out one day when I'm with them for a long time and I haven't got to go and make lunch or anything. But for now, I know it's safer just not to put those things out. So, with the very young children, yeah, loose parts like pine cones, and you get wooden blocks that look like pieces of tree slices almost, and they stack them up, that type of thing. And as Marion said, whatever those children are doing, that's the thing to go for. I hope that helps, Jess. I'm happy to chat about it later if you need to take it further. Barbara, my younger ones love metal tins. Oh yes, tins are a really good idea, and you can get tin openers that get the sharp bits off, can't you? Anything that makes a good noise, yeah. And metal things are just they are great. Anything like that is really, really helpful. One of the things I would say I've found to be one of our favourite loose parts is napkin rings. If you go to a charity shop, for some reason there are always loads of napkin rings for sale. People must buy them and never use them, and they're fabulous. They're all sorts of fancy designs, and you can stack them up. You can use them as a part in small world play. You can poke them into Play-Doh. You can do all sorts of things with them. They usually just cost a few pennies. They're just very nice to explore for children. With younger ones, as Yolanta, I keep some larger loose parts like bamboo channels or pine cones, conkers and rocks. That's fabulous. There we go. Again, younger ones like to transfer and line up, use utensils and carry objects. Yeah. So when that picture, Yolanta, of the baskets and things, I would definitely say go with containers as one of your first loose parts or open-ended resources. And that can be boxes, baskets, bowls, anything that children can put something in and move it around, because very often that's a very strong schema, or it's just a type of play that children really enjoy, and it enables them to transfer things from one place to another. Right, okay. Oh, Tiffany, thank you for coming, and sorry that we're going on so long. Let's have a look. Marion's case study. Right, I'm just going to go and have a look at my Slido and see how you all got on with the Slido. Hold on a second. What? Oh, have we not got anyone on the Slido? Oh yeah, loads. Sorry, I had refreshed. Just having a quick look at the Slido, so bear with me while I'm reading it. Slices, guttering, planks, offcuts of wood, leaves, ties, yeah, plastic bits. Bottle top lids, as long as they're not too small and you're not worried about that, they're always really good. Old spoons, yes, fantastic. Pots, pans. You'll see when you look at the references at the end, there's the Play Scotland website, and that's got some amazing ideas on there to get you started. Yeah, conkers, shells. Yeah, well done. Thanks, everyone. Some brilliant ideas on there. Let me just come back out of there. There's your. Oh, I'll upload the references to Damon. I'll upload all of the slides. Let me just come out of this bit.